Hello guys, I'm here.
We are gathered here today. Hello, this is the social media experiment. This is brought to you in part by Jascott and Grewal, Zachary Clemens and Diego Ventura. And I suppose Aiden helped out a little bit as well. I guess, sort of, maybe. Well, anyways, we began this project by trying to develop a question, a really important question, that we would seek to analyze. We wanted to see if there was a correlation between two variables, and one of our first ideas was whether or not there was a correlation between basketball players and height, or rather height and basketball players. So that is, if an individual was tall, were they more likely or less likely to be a basketball player? This idea was scrapped, and our next idea we thought would be a little bit better. So we wanted to see if there was any correlation between hair color and eye color. That is, if an individual has dark hair color, do they also have dark eye color? This was an important question that we sought to analyze, but as you may have already noticed, it's very simple and probably easy to conclude on your own. Brain blast. Our final idea came when we tried to develop an idea surrounding social media. We first started out by trying to figure out whether or not there was some sort of a difference between social media accounts owned by boys versus girls. So we took social media accounts that were very common, such as, Facebook, for example, and we compared this to other social media accounts that were valid, and we wanted to see whether or not girls or boys owned more depending upon, of course, their gender. So we started with a population that consisted of all of the students at Antelope High School. We then pulled a sample from the individuals who were in our classes that were eligible for the study. So we then, once we had this data, blocked by gender and class, gender being boys and girls, and class being seniors and juniors. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough data to form any valid conclusions from class, so instead we used the data to prove an alternative hypothesis that we had revolving around gender. So in order to even be valid for our study, we first went around asking whether or not individuals had active social media accounts available at the time. Sites such as Pinterest, for example, did not count because there was not enough peer-to-peer interaction. Other social media accounts like Imgur, Facebook, or Instagram, we did count. And after asking many of the boys and girls whether or not they had a certain number of social media accounts, we then asked them for the specific number that they believed to own. And in the case of the boys, the mean number of social media accounts owned was around 3, while as girls was around 5. The standard deviation for boys was about 1.3 and girls was about 2.1. So we formed a null hypothesis, which was the idea that both of the girls and the boys had the same social media accounts. This would be that they had the same amount. We also wanted to form our null hypothesis, which was the idea that we wanted to prove, or the idea that the girls had more social media accounts, in fact, than the boys did. This we sought to prove, and by forming a t-test, a two-sample independent t-test, in fact, we wanted to determine whether or not we could prove with 95% confidence that the girls did in fact have more social media accounts than the boys. As stated earlier, we used the boys' mean of around 3 and the girls of around 5 to develop a p-value, and then compared this to our alpha, which was 0.05. Since our p-value was approximately 0, we rejected the null, and instead we left with the conclusion that we were 95% confident that the mean number of social media accounts owned by girls versus boys was in fact higher for girls when compared to boys. So for example, as stated earlier, if we went around and we asked girls versus boys whether or not they owned a large number of social media accounts, or any social media accounts at all, the girls would on average say that they owned more than the boys did. So for example, if we asked a girl and she said that she owned 5 or more social media accounts, it was likely that the boys owned around 2 or less social media accounts. Looking back on our experiment, there are many things that we should have done differently. For example, we should have used a sampling method other than convenience sampling to select individuals from our population that were valid for our study. Unfortunately, with the time constraints, we used convenience sampling, and we would much rather have preferred to use systematic, stratified, or cluster sampling to select individuals who were more valid for our study. We also would have liked to poll students not only from the different genders, but also from different class pools, so juniors or seniors, for example. And so in conclusion, we would like to state that our results may not be as valid as if we use some other sampling method. That is all we have. Thank you for watching.
So the p-value is approximately 0. So Aiden, what do we do to the null hypothesis? Aiden.
Reject the hoe.
I think you mean reject the null.
Idiots.